Good afternoon, brethren, and welcome to everyone once again to our Sabbath afternoon study. And as Sister Danita said and commanded, you must be blessed. We must all be blessed. But seriously, we want it to be a blessing to everyone. We're going to start right in. And our subject this afternoon is the first and second Exodus. And the question is, how long does it take to travel from Egypt to the Promised Land? And the reality in ancient times was it took more than a lifetime for many, for most. And today it is the same thing. But it doesn't have to be. And the reason that we see this, the long drawn-out delay between our journey to our journey to the Promised Land is the circuitous route that we take. If you look at route that ancient Israel took, it is not the route or route that you would think about taking yourself. It is a journey that was made necessary by the unbelief and the murmuring and the rebellion and the general stiff-neckedness of the people. The ancient Israelites behaved very badly on the way to Israel, to the Promised Land. Now, we would like to think well of ourselves. Who doesn't? But inspiration has told us that we have done worse than they. And so our circuitous route is even more twisty and time-consuming than theirs. How long does it take to travel from Hebron to Israel, Egypt, going the other direction? Surprisingly, it doesn't take that long. Israel arrived in Egypt in the second year of the famine. And that means that in less than 2 years, there were 5 one-way trips. 5 one-way trips in less than 2 years. Actually, quite a bit less. And if you think about it, it was the 2 one-way trips each time for the sons when they went to purchase grain, and then the one-way trip when Israel went into Egypt. 5 trips in less than 2 years. That's how long it takes under normal circumstances. You know, Brother Hadif, when the message first came, he didn't think it would be very long. And it didn't have to be. the Lord didn't force the denomination to reject the message. They had an opportunity to move straight ahead into the loud cry. But they rejected that opportunity. Then there was the wandering in the wilderness period for the Davidians. And we're not out of that period yet. But it didn't have to be. Israel took 5 one-way trips, that distance, in less than 2 years. Quite a bit less than 2 years. The distance is not that long, but the unfaithfulness of Israel was very great. And our unfaithfulness, brethren, today is greater. And that is what the problem is. In the second Exodus, our journey is even more confused than their journey. We haven't even started across to the promised land with the circle around it. We're back and forth across the land of Goshen still. It doesn't have to be. We could have gotten this work done years ago. How far is it in reality between Cairo and Hebron? About 250 miles, straight line, and you don't have to travel in a straight line. If you're on a road, it's going to take longer. But in old times in this country, when they had the wagon trains, people used to travel 10 to 20 miles a day. If you travel, if you double that distance to 500 miles, and you travel only 10 miles a day, that's 50 days to travel that distance. Probably Jacob's sons did better than that, since they were going back and forth pretty casually. But 50 days is 50 days. That's still very reasonable compared to 40 years. The 40 years was entirely a product of their unfaithfulness, their coldness, their unbelief. It had nothing to do with reality. And that's the same thing today, brethren, only worse. And this is what answer 1, page 62 says. My question is, what took them so long? Unbelief, stiff-neckedness, distrust of divine leadership, and office-seeking, therefore, were the four-headed monster that devoured the people of the Exodus. And these will devour every present truth believer who strays into their lair. Brethren, a lot of people have been devoured over the years. A lot. The first generation had been condemned to perish in the wilderness because of their unbelief, yet the same spirit appeared in their children. Now, many, many brethren have perished on the way in the second Exodus. And I don't mean those who are laid away, those who are resting. There are a lot of brethren who have died spiritually forever. Yes, there will be the second resurrection, but that's not a good resurrection, and it doesn't count in this sense. They have perished there forever, essentially. Too many people have died on the way, spiritually. It is nothing to be laid away to rest. Nothing at all. It is a light matter, brethren, in the larger view of things, in the Lord's view, and what should be our view as well. I know that we make a large matter of it, but it is nothing compared to spiritual death that has affected so many people. And when we speak about the spiritual death that has affected so much of the first generation, we're speaking about murmuring, complaining, rebelling, coldness, unbelief. These things have caused people to sidetrack themselves into all kinds of various little dead ends. And as they wander around, they get discouraged, they get colder, and then they die spiritually. Over and over this has happened. It could happen to us, brethren. There are those who have been here, right here, who have died spiritually. And it could happen to any of us, brethren, any of us who are listening, watching. It is a possibility. And it is worse than being laid away to rest. Far, far worse. Do not think so, worry and put so much emphasis on the death of this body. It is of no account in the larger scheme of things. But spiritual death, this is a very large matter for us all. And it has happened over and over to so many brethren since the time the message came. It needn't have happened. We could have been home by now. We could have been in the promised land by now. We could have been in heaven by now. We know that because the Spirit of prophecy tells us that. It's not a made-up statement. Now, what kind of unbelief has affected us in our mad dashes back and forth around the country? Here's the first one that affected us. This is from page 9 of the Bashan Code, Volume 1. A study from the Bible and the Rod was presented to us by Brother Bingham, proving conclusively that there are 3 places of spiritual pasture where God's people are to feed. See 2SR, it should be 1SR 243. The study went on to show that since the Carmel of the Rod, Old Carmel, is no more, and since Gilead is the kingdom, see Jeremiah 51:8 and Jeremiah 46:11 and 12, we are therefore now in the Bashan period and must accordingly get our meat in due season from the rod in Bashan. We're not getting it from a different message. It's the rod in Bashan. This entire study will be published as soon as possible, and it was. But it did not help the unbelief of many people. The delegates did accept it, and it was unanimously accepted by the session, but unbelief was heavy. And because of that unbelief, we had to progress back and forth across the country, just like the Israelites of old. Now, it's not just a matter of going back and forth, it is a matter of time. And that time equates with people becoming discouraged, people dying spiritually. Very large number of the old brethren became discouraged and cold. And brethren, there's no use to look at those people. This is still going on. We are still bringing people in who praise the Lord and rejoice with us, and then they grow cold and they disappear. They spiritually die. Just while the physical body is still walking around, they are dead as far as the Lord looks at them. And this has happened, brethren, over and over. And the problem is that it doesn't matter how long time goes on, how many people come in and go out, until there's 144,000 to stand on Mount Zion with the Lamb, time will continue. And we will continue around until that happens. At a certain point, we need to find a way to, with the Lord's help, to prevent this spiritual death from coldness and unbelief and murmuring and complaining and office seeking and all the other sins of the ancient and modern Israelites. At a certain point, we have to find a way to overcome these things. And we can. The Lord wants us to overcome these things. We don't have to suffer from unbelief another 40 years. We don't have to be subject to a spiritual death because of our coldness and unbelief. We don't have to. We can live. The Lord has promised this. Now, we, as Davidians today, we must find a way for ourselves and to help each other avoid these things. We've seen people come with lots of zeal, lots of energy for the message. They want to teach, they want to share. And they do for a little while, but then the things of the world start weighing them down. And they start to fade away. Sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly, but they fade. And brethren, those people are spiritually dead. Many of them are spiritually dead today. Completely dead. Moses was not one of the backsliding, stiff-necked leaders of Israel, as were Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, and those who followed them. Now, there are those who are faithful with Moses. We're not Moses ourselves, but we can be Caleb's and Joshua's faithful all the way. It is possible. And whether we get across to the promised land in this life, or as those who partake of the special resurrection, is not the key point here. The key thing is that we are faithful until the very end, until we get there. And we can be, brethren. That is something that is guaranteed to us. The Lord has promised that He will help us be faithful if we want to be, if we will lay hold on His promises. Now, we're not promised that this body will go all the way, but we are promised that we will be there. Yes, we will, brethren. We will be there if we're faithful. But the problem is with the stiff-necked leaders of Israel, Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. And we had this sidetracking of the work in the years from 1962 to 1963, 66, years of rebellion. As we were moving forward, people were also lifting themselves up to question and rebel against the association. Now, what did they accomplish? What did the rebels accomplish anciently, besides being responsible for a new thing? Okay, something that had never been seen before, while the earth opened its mouth. What did the modern rebels accomplish? Nothing, brethren. Those who rebelled are all spiritually and physically dead, with one or two exceptions. And while we pray for these brethren who are still alive, the rebels, we pray that they will be saved. We know for a fact that most of them died in their rebellion, just as ancient Korah, Dathan, and Abiram did. And what did they accomplish? What did Vista and Ukiah accomplish? What did Salem accomplish? Nothing, brethren, nothing but confusion. They gave birth to more confusion and madness, and they themselves accomplished nothing. Salem is uninhabited today. Who could believe that in the past? Well, we could believe it because we know that nothing would happen to, no success would come to Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. But Salem is empty of human beings. This is a fact. You know why it's empty? It is unlivable. I've seen pictures that we didn't publish. We published the pictures that were not so bad, but I've seen pictures that of the inside of some places, not taken by any Bayesian person, but these, Salem was uninhabitable. It was a terrible, terrible mess. No one wants to live there today. They live down the road, literally. They bought a house a mile or two down the road. So it accomplished nothing. And neither did Vista. Who remembers Vista? Who remembers Ukiah? Gone. And nothing to show about it. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Not literally in any type of antitypical sense, a specific antitypical sense, but it is truly antitypical Korah, Dathan, and Abiram in the sense of rebels who the earth swallowed and they disappeared without a trace. They have disappeared, brethren. Now, that was one of the problems with ancient Israel. It's one of the problems with modern Israel. So we have unbelief, we have rebellion and murmuring and office seeking, and we have also coldness and lukewarmness. Remember that an example of lukewarmness, carelessness, and indifference is contagious. It is reproduced in a multitude of ways, and iniquity abounds. Many are bound about with worldliness and apostasy, and congealing the very lifeblood of the soul, because of the coldness of the ministers professing to be watchmen upon the walls of Zion. It starts here with the ministers. All of us, brethren, all of us who are workers and teachers and leaders and sharers of the message, if we are cold, it's contagious. If we are lukewarm, it's contagious. And then people come in a lukewarm state, and then they become cold. It is contagious. Now, somehow, that has to be changed. One brother who deserves to be anonymous, at least for now, he has come up with the thought that the way this is going to change is by having a little Ezekiel 9 to take away all these cold, lukewarm people. Well, that's an interesting idea, but it's not in the message. But we do need, he is right about one thing. We do have a problem. We do have a problem, brethren. You bring new people in to what? To teach them our lukewarmness and our worldliness and our carelessness and our indifference. We have to change. They have to come into a place that is on fire, that is full of the love of God, that is living these things. This is what is necessary. Otherwise, we just bring them in to make them like us, only worse. The mission of the Church of Christ is to save perishing sinners. It is to make known the love of God to men and to win them to Christ by the efficacy of that love. The truth for this time must be carried into the dark corners of the earth, and this work may begin at home. The followers of Christ should not live selfish lives, but imbued with the Spirit of Christ, they should work in harmony with Him. There are causes for the present coldness and unbelief. The love of the world and the cares of life separate the soul from God, and this is our problem. We have too much concern with where is our daily bread coming from, where is our raiment coming from, wherewithal will we be housed, and so on. All of these concerns, they're legitimate in that we must take care of the things that we must take care of, but we are not to be wrapped up in it. They're not to take priority. And this is what happens. People become too enamored of the world, of moving up, of getting something better, a bigger house, a newer car, a better education for their children. One after another, they do these things until they're completely wrapped up in the world and lost, brethren, to the coldness of the world. The love of the world and the cares of life separate the soul from God. It is a certainty. The Lord has said it, and we have seen it in reality, each one of us. The water of life must be in us and flowing out from us, springing up into everlasting life. How does that happen? If we are not sharing the truth, this living water of life, if we're not eagerly sharing these things, we don't have this. We don't have this water of life flowing through us. It's stagnant then. And that is the first step on the way to being cold and separated from the Lord. We must work out what God works in. If the Christian would enjoy the light of life, he must increase his efforts to bring others to the knowledge of the truth. His life must be characterized by exertion and sacrifices to do others good, and then there will be no complaints of lack of enjoyment. This necessity of sacrificing for others, it is for ourselves in the end. If we don't do that, if we are not working for others, if it doesn't cost us anything, any time, any effort, any pain, any sorrow, and joy too, if it doesn't cost us anything, then we're not doing anything and we're not going to receive anything. And we're going to be on the pathway to lukewarmness and coldness and spiritual death. And this has happened over and over again. It is what the Spirit of Prophecy says, but it's what reality shows over and over. Brethren, if you are not doing for others in one way or another, if you're not helping others, spreading the truth, then you are spiritually stagnant and in danger of death, spiritual death. This has happened over and over and over. And we'll never reach the kingdom at the rate we're going now, because we are, as we've shown before, up until recently at least, our growth rate was below the growth rate of the church. In other words, we would never catch up with the church at the rate we're going. And that will change, and that is changing for various reasons. But unless we individually are willing to do what the Lord has asked us to do, to work for others in a sacrificial way, a real way. And the first thing we have to do is sacrifice our time and convenience and ease. Yes, we do. But if we are not willing to do this, we're not going to overcome. We're not going to have that life ourselves, and we're going to gradually fade away. So if we're going to get to the other side here, we shortened the distance of the Atlantic Ocean there, but it's still a very large distance. And if we are going to get across, we have to change. There has to be a radical change. Now, once we start doing the things that the Lord has asked us to do, the people who come in, instead of them turning worse than us, in many cases, they may become better than us. They will catch fire. They will burn hot with the zeal of a new convert. And it is a good thing. But if we are not bringing in people, if we are not seeing fruit for our work, then there's something wrong. And what is wrong is not just that we are not running around grabbing hold of people and dragging them into the church. What's wrong is that we are not, the water of life is not flowing through us. That's the problem. And if the water of life is not flowing through us, then it's stagnant. And we are in danger of spiritual death. So this is our closing thought from Davidian Soothsayers and their Pseudo-Sooths, page 36. God and Bashan do not need you and me. We are unnecessary to the carrying out of his redemptive purpose and work through Bashan, and consequently are as expendable as were Cain, Korah, Dathan, Abiram, Esau, Achan, Judas, et al., for the carrying out of his purpose progressively through the ages. No, brother, sister, it is you and I that need God and Bashan, and badly. Where his chariot is now based, discharging its precious cargo of truth and loading its precious cargo of souls for that long-awaited great day, trip home to the land of our fathers. Brethren, we need to be on fire. We need Bashan. We need to catch fire from Bashan. We here at Bashan need to be on fire. This is the place where the whole Reformation and revival needs to spread out from. We need to be full of the love of Christ. It needs to be overflowing out from us. Each time we run into someone, it needs to overflow back and forth. And as it does, we will have that revival here. We will have that revival at Bashan, and it will spread out. And we do need to be these people who are on fire. Otherwise, we're going to be the people who are spiritually dead even while they were living. Cain, Korah, Dathan, Abiram, Esau, Achan, Judas, and so on. And many today, brethren, who are spiritually dead while they're still alive. So I want to urge us all to think about how long this trip home should last. The reality is that we are closer to the kingdom than we think. We are closer. And it is not going to be a long stretch of tomorrow where we have another 80 years here dilly-dallying on the way, running back and forth and around in circles. It's not going to happen, brethren. But for many of us, and I'm speaking about the young ones among us, brethren, as well as the older ones, many of us are not going to make it unless we unless we have this revival, unless we have this reformation, unless the spiritual water of life is flowing through us to others, unless we are actually helping others, both physically and spiritually. And you know, we help others physically in whatever way and that they need. If someone comes to us and they're cold and hungry and otherwise troubled, discouraged, and so on, we don't tell them, be at peace and depart. We don't do that. We help them. But vastly more important than the physical help is the spiritual help that we can give them. And if we are not sharing spiritually, if we're not helping spiritually, then whatever surface things we do, it is of no account, really. We need to do physically good deeds of kindness and help and love, but even more, we need to be working in every way possible for our brothers and sisters. It is possible. There's not one person who is able to eat, Sister White says, who cannot do some work. Okay, it's a strong statement, but it's true, especially today when we have ways of working. You can work for the church even while you're laying down in your bed. It is a true thing, brethren. And we need to be determined to be people who are so full of the love of Christ that it's bubbling out from us and spreading out the water of life to all those we come in contact with. So I hope this was a blessing to you, brethren. I hope we leave more determined than ever to be among those who make it all the way home. Thank you, brethren.